Hi, I'm Dr. Stirling Hastings, again here in Camarillo, California, talking about this subject of shame, this very painful experience that dominates so much of life, what goes on around us, and has a great impact on any of the negatives that we're experiencing. So I would like to start actually a series of videos on the subject of shame in relationships, because this is certainly one of the most harmful places that it shows up. So, circular arguments, are you familiar with those? This is where one person says to the partner something like, "You didn't empty the dishwasher. I told you that it was ready to be emptied." So do you hear the tone? It isn't, "Honey, you haven't done it, need to have it done," or something along that line, which would be factual. It's shaming the person. So then the honey says, "Well, you didn't tell me that it was ready," gets defensive, because when we're shamed, one of the main reactions to that is feeling defensive. So then that person's defensiveness then triggers defensiveness in the first person, who comes back with, "Well, you could just look. I mean, you saw me put the dishes in the dishwasher and turn it on. Doesn't that make sense that then eventually the dishes would be clean and they would need to be taken out? And it's just not fair that I'm the one that has to be in charge of all the housekeeping stuff. And whatever you do is just considered helping." Okay? The circular argument is getting underway. And then the second person says something like, "Oh, you're always on me. A day doesn't go by that you don't tell me something that's just horribly wrong with me. Why did you marry me in the first place?" And the first person responds to the content of that instead of the quality of it, and says something like, "Well, I don't know why I married you. You're right. I should have found out ahead of time if you knew how to take the dishes out of the dishwasher." And then the second one says, "Well, I'm sorry I married you. It's just so awfully hard to have to be married to somebody who's always finding fault with me. I'm sick of it. I'm out of here." Right? And it escalates. And then, of course, the first person is saying, "No, don't leave me. What are you thinking? You're terrible, threatening," and so on. And around and around and around. Now, shame is the root of everything that both of them have said to each other. So defensiveness is one of the most common reactions to being shamed. And you notice that the first person shaming was very small. The second one could have said, "Please don't talk to me in that tone. I didn't realize that the dishes needed to be unloaded, and I will do it." Or something like, "I'm right in the middle of something, and I'll do it in an hour or so." Straightforward, no defensiveness. And then there wouldn't have been a circular argument unless the first person was still angry and wanted to shame the partner. But if neither of them are operating from shame, it would just be factual. The first person would notice that the dishes were still in the dishwasher, and wanting to put the dirty dishes in would see that the clean ones needed to be taken out first, and saying to the partner who had said that he or she would have taken the dishes out, just pointing out that they weren't out, and that, "I need you to do that if you're going to do it so that I can put the dirty ones in." And then the second person would have said, "Oh, sorry, I'm right in the middle of this, and I really don't want to stop right now. I'll tell you what, I'll empty the dishwasher in an hour, and then I'll put those dishes in it. Sorry that you're going to have them there in the meantime." Right? That is the factual, caring, non-shame-based communication. But there's something about love relationships that people seem to have more permission to shame each other. And then, of course, receiving that shaming brings on the defensiveness of the shamed person. So, you can have this kind of experience with people at work, with your parents, your siblings, your neighbors, your friends. But if they're not that intense, then it's easier to walk through it. It's easier to stop it before it becomes really circular. So if you're in a relationship and you're finding that you're having difficulties, I really recommend that you start with looking at your feelings of shame and your shaming of your partner. So it's almost guaranteed that if you shame your partner, that person's defensiveness is going to shame you back. So this is where you have a whole lot of control over things going a lot better in your relationship. And even if you're talking about things that are really serious, not dishes in the dishwasher, but serious things like, let's say that your partner was flirting with somebody at a party and they were actually touching each other in ways that felt inappropriate to you, something that's really hurtful. That even with those kinds of things, to approach the person non-shamingly is the only way to get it to actually become a subject to address and communicate about and to move forward with. This is true of any of the big subjects. Use of money is another one where one partner will do something the other one doesn't like, and the one that doesn't like it will shame that person. If you start out with shaming, unless you're with somebody who really sees it all and refuses to go there with you, it's like automatic. If you shame someone, they're going to be defensive. And if they're defensive, they're very likely to shame you back. So, would you please leave comments? Let's see if we can get a discussion going on this subject.
If you have an experience like this yourself, if you go into circular arguments regularly, I would love to hear from you. We would all love to actually hear other people's experiences too. So let's get a conversation going. And please click on like and share this with your partner and anyone else who you think it might be useful for. Circular arguments are so in need of being understood so that people can start interrupting them.